Chelsea Janes, national baseball writer for the Washington Post. We are actually at a restaurant that's right across the street from the Washington Nationals.
Yep.
And I'm not going to not ask you at least one Nationals question, one baseball question, but that's not why you're here. You're here because there's going to be a huge story this week in the Washington community, where the Washington Post is apparently going to radically transform its workforce and no longer be a local and regional paper. Is it that striking what's about to happen? Is that your sense?
That's our sense. We don't know. We haven't heard officially from anyone. Everyone that I know, people in my position, are piecing things together little by little, rumor by rumor. But the local section, the sports section,
right.
and then the international, the foreign correspondents, everyone's kind of bracing for impact. And our understanding is that they want to cut all that down and make this a politics first paper here.
It's what's been striking is how public all the staff has been. You have been. The White House Bureau has written direct letters to Bezos, all these public letters. David Ignatius in a Washington Post run chat. I mean, everybody has been sounding this alarm. I've never seen this at an organization.
Yeah.
As somebody who every once in a while caused a tiny bit of turmoil at my own old organization, I've never seen it like this anywhere. What is this about? Is this anger at Bezos? Is this anger at Will Lewis? What is it?
I think it's a combination of things. I think it's a long-running sequence of decisions that people like me, people smarter than me in other departments, have looked at and said, this seems to take us away from what we do well. It seems to spend money in places where we don't know how we're going to get it back. Mm-hmm. And it seems to just kind of abandon the mission, and it's particularly the local mission. I think we've seen the writing on the wall there for a long time. And it's also, frankly, been a little bit of a pattern of internal disrespect, from whether that's from Will Lewis and his tenure, but really for years before him as well, where, for example, we hear about these layoffs and a lot of it goes public before anyone tells us. Before, I had a hunch that I was maybe not going to the Olympics next week, and it was.
And you originally thought you were?
Yes, I was planning to go in a couple days, and I had the sense that I might hear for sure late Friday, because if I were a media organization, I would dump my worst news Friday, and they knew it would get out, and it did. And so I was waiting till Friday for a news dump to learn, where I was going in a few days. And I think that lack of internal communication and therefore the perceived lack of respect from the higher ups is what I think has mobilized everyone at a place that wants it.
All of the staff has addressed Bezos, not Lewis. Why?
Yeah. Because it seems like he has the power to change it. It's not my money. He is where he is for a reason, but he's got money. And it's like, if the money is the problem, why now? Why on this scale? Mm-hmm. And why, frankly, have you been paying people to run the paper who've made that problem worse? Because that is what has happened. It is, over the last 5 years, more probably, seemed like decision after decision. There was a time where we were expanding and putting reporters all over the country and, trying to make that kind of storytelling a strength. And then, a few years later, we're cutting all that back. And then they tell us we're going to have a third newsroom, whatever that is. That has gone by the wayside. It's just decision after decision where it starts to be like, wait, do those people know what they're doing? Are they seeing what we're seeing, which is audio, video, personality-driven stuff that has sustained other places and other personalities, and we're not necessarily getting the support we need to make that transition.
There was Nate Silver, who did an interesting chart on his Substack earlier this week of showing of sort of how the Washington Post and the New York Times, sort of as far as like mind share, it was a way of trying to measure sort of mind share in the information ecosystem. How much did what they're reporting was sort of dominant, and it was basically frickin' frack here. It was the way I've always grown up and the way I've always operated here for 35 years, which is the Post and the Times. And Times does some things a little bit better than the Post. Post does some things a little better than the Times, and they're always kind of both friendly competitors. Yes. But those were 1A and 1B of national newspapers, maybe the Journal's 1C, right?
Sure, totally.
And then suddenly there was this fall off, and he put it right at the decision when Bezos intervened on Kamala Harris' endorsement. Yeah. And it seemed like everything has changed since then.
I think that decision, from what I have heard from loyal Post people in all kinds of realms, people who come for us for sports, people who come to us for other stuff, is it just alienated people who wanted to trust that the people making decisions at the Post, making endorsement decisions, were making them with the good of the people reading in mind, and not the good of their future business, not the good of readers that don't like the Post anyway. It just seemed like the clearest measure yet that we were trying to appease people that weren't in the building and that also weren't in our readership. And I think that, I can't speak for anyone, but for me as an employee, it made me wonder what we were doing, and it made the Post feel like something different.
Are you guys hoping Don Graham speaks out? Are you hoping, like, I've been waiting for Don Graham to say something?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't
Marty
put it on
Baron,
him.
Marty Baron
Sure.
has, and he speaks out all the time, and it's
Sure.
gone nowhere.
Sure.
For,
And that's the thing is, I think part of what we've seen this week in the public outcry is it feels like there's no hope. The only way to do anything is embarrass them, which worked a little bit. They're sending a few people to the Olympics. They're going to fire them while they're there, but it's just, it feels like there's no appealing to better angels. It's just appealing to wallets of people who, make a lot of decisions on spreadsheets. That's what it feels like. I'm not in those rooms, but I think we all kind of think, what does Jeff Bezos care what Don Graham says anymore?
When I've run newsrooms, when I've run editorial products, you always want to measure yourself against somebody.
Yeah.
So with your editors at the Washington Post sports section, how much, is there a local competitor? Is there national, how did you guys measure yourselves and whether you were doing, meeting the moment or not? What was the measurement that your bosses always held up back in?
Definitely be the best on local teams, dominate the local beats, and we had done it well enough for long enough that the Athletic never really tried. They tried to come in once.
They had once.
They tried to get
they
us
had
all.
David. They have Aldridge, which we love. We love David.
Totally.
Yeah.
But they never really broke in on the beats, and we took a lot of pride in that. And
Oh, that's interesting. The fact that the Athletic didn't have a dominant Washington reporter.
Right.
Yeah.
And never really committed that many resources to it because it wasn't a worthy. They
They're
knew
like, hey,
the
it's
Post.
Washington Post.
Right.
Yeah, they have loyal following.
Yes, and I think in a national sense, we probably failed to have a good idea of what success looked like. As someone who tried to do that, it's just a hard place to break in. If people aren't coming to us for national news on sports all the time, it's like, who exactly are we drawing in with that content?
Well, and this gets to the identity crisis the Post has had my entire adult life here, which is they vacillate between, are we this national paper that covers the world? But are we a local paper too? And it's like, yes, look, New York Times goes through this. And you ask anybody, like, New York Times will tell you what's going on in Myanmar, but not Brooklyn, right? Like,
100%.
So I get that. But so that it's interesting. And I guess that's what they're struggling with, which is we know we're a national paper for 75% of the stuff we do.
Yep.
We don't know how to be a local paper. Is that the mindset?
I thought we were doing pretty well, I think our local teams have been, some of the key figures there have been gutted over the years, but I think for people in my job, it was where it was the most complicated, right? It was like, who is coming to the Washington?